Let's go ahead and focus on the 53-man roster. There's a good amount of competitions in this roster, and we have a lot of talent on this team. There's a lot of talent from front to back on almost every single position. So let's go ahead and get started with the offense, right?
Yep.
So let's go ahead, quarterback. We have 3 quarterbacks on the roster currently: Mitch Trubisky, Nick Foles, Tyler Bray. I don't think Tyler Bray is on the team this year. I think he's probably on the practice squad. So do we really need to discuss this anymore? It's just
I think there's gonna be 2 quarterbacks on the roster, and I think that'll be Trubisky and Foles.
Okay, so for running back right now, we have 5 if you consider Cordell Patterson as a running back, which we will for this instance. And we have David Montgomery, Tariq Cohen, Cordell Patterson, Ryan Nall, and Artavis Pierce. In my prediction, I'm going to go ahead and have us keeping 4, that being David Montgomery, Tariq Cohen, Cordell Patterson, and Artavis Pierce.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I would just, personally, I'd keep Cordell Patterson kind of just slotted in that wide receiver roster spot as far as what he's occupying. I think that Artavis Pierce, the first thing that went through my head is I was like, man, I hope he's not being forced off the roster by this move or moving Cordell Patterson into the running back room. But I do think that he'll solidify his spot because I really hope that he does. So I will think that, as far as true running backs, they'll keep Montgomery, Cohen, and Pierce. And Ryan Nall, who has been the star of past preseasons, will finally be leaving early on the practice squad. One of those 2.
It's so funny to see how sometimes Bears fans favor kind of strange players. And
Yeah,
Ryan Nall, I've just never understood the hype for him. I really never have understood it. I have way higher hopes for Artavis Pierce. I think that he can actually provide us with something that we don't have on the roster currently.
Exactly.
So that's why I'm going ahead and keep him in. The famous wrecking Nall is leaving the building. But let's go ahead. Yeah. Yeah, right. Let's go ahead and look at wide receivers. We have 10 on the roster currently. I keep getting tripped up with Cordell Patterson. He's not considered a wide receiver currently, apparently. So we have Allen Robinson, Anthony Miller, Ted Ginn Jr., Riley Ridley, Javon Wims, Darnell Mooney, Trevor Davis, Reggie Davis, Ahmad Wagner, and Thomas Ives. So I think that it's pretty clear that Reggie Davis, Ahmad Wagner, Thomas Ives, and Trevor Davis are probably not going to be on the roster. So that leaves us with 6. So I believe that Darnell Mooney and Javon Wims will make the roster. It would be a massive issue if Darnell Mooney doesn't make the roster. And truthfully, we talk about it pretty consistently. If one of these guys are not likely to make the team, it's probably going to be Javon Wims if they go with 5. But I do think they end up going with 6, not including Cordell Patterson. So I think Javon Wims will be fine.
Yeah, I think that Ted Ginn could possibly on the bubble. Here we talked about this beforehand. I don't think he's kind of someone in the Victor Cruz situation where
hell yeah
he could be on the way out. But I think it's more likely that they do stick with him. And I think for sure, I think Darnell Mooney, well, he is kind of on the bubble. I think that he will stick around. And I think Javon Wims, given that they keep all of them, he's likely to be on there too, so I'm in agreement with you. But I think more than anyone, I think it's Ginn and Wims that are kind of the most at threat here. One of those 2, if they end up cutting someone, will be either one of those.
Which is kind of crazy to think about considering that Ginn had 700 yards last year. But it's just one of those players where he's getting up there in age and his yards largely came inconsistently. They were mostly just only explosive plays. So it's one of those things where you don't really know how it's going to shake out. And I have to be embarrassed and admit that I was a fan of the Victor Cruz signing. I always really liked Victor Cruz, and when we signed him on the Bears, I was pretty excited for him. I'm not going to lie, but yeah, it seems like it is kind of a similar mold. There is comparisons. Let's go ahead and move on to the tight end. Currently, we have 7. We no longer have 11 that people were making fun of us. Who would have guessed we would have cut a couple of the guys that were undrafted reserve contracts? Who would have guessed that, right? But right now, for sure, locks are Jimmy Graham, Demetrius Harris, Cole Kmet, and then I believe Jesper Horsted will make the roster as well. And then probably the other one that I believe will make it is JP Holtz. I think we ultimately go with probably 5 or 4. So JP Holtz or Jesper Horsted are the ones that are kind of, competing for that position, in my opinion. And then Eric Saubert and Darian Clark, I don't think that he's going to be, either of those players are going to be on the roster.
Realistically, it's between 4 or 5 for sure. I think they should only keep 4, to be honest.
Yeah, same here.
Personally, which I think, Jimmy Graham, Demetrius Harris, Cole Kmet, like you said, those are locks. And personally, I'd rather see Jesper Horsted than JP Holtz. But it's definitely going to be one of those two. Saubert, no way, and Darian Clark is definitely out. So I think that, it's either between Holtz and Horsted for that 4th. I think if they keep 5, that's just being a little too extra on the position, because I think Cole Kmet and Jimmy Graham are your clear 1 and 2, and then the other 2 are depth, possible special teams kind of players.
Absolutely. And now we're going to move on to the offensive line, where we currently have 14, but I'm really unsure what we're going to see. In my opinion, I think we're going to end up keeping probably 9, maybe 8. I think we're going to keep 9. I bet we go cheap at tight end, and then instead carry an extra lineman and take 9. So we have, and just because we don't have a ton of consistency there. So right now, for sure, locks, we got starters with Charles Leno Jr., James Daniels, Cody Whitehair, Jermaine Ifedi, Bobby Massey, and then kind of guys who are kind of, could make it, or are going to be out is going to be Jason Spriggs, Rashad Coward, Alex Bars, Corey Levin, Arlington Hambright, Dieter Eilson, Sam Mustapher, Lacavius Simmons, and Badara Traore. I don't know this. Yeah. Traore. Okay. So yeah, we got quite a bit of players here. If I'm going through, I think that for sure, obviously the starting 5 is going to be Charles Leno Jr., James Daniels, Cody Whitehair, Jermaine Ifedi, Bobby Massey. I bet we keep Jason Spriggs. I bet we keep Rashad Coward, and I bet we keep either Alex Bars or Arlington Hambright.
Yeah, I think that the real question between Bars and Hambright.
Actually, I think we keep both Alex Bars and Arlington Hambright, because that'd be 9. That'd be 9.
Yeah. I think that's likely what will play out. I think, of course, like you said, that those 5, the starting 5, are very solidified. Spriggs has been good depth. Rashad Coward, something that they've felt pretty good about. And then Alex Bars, Arlington Hambright, just because I think, I'm in total agreement with you. I think keeping an extra lineman instead of that tight end, I think would be a smart move for this team, especially where the offensive line is at.
Yeah. And I think that the real competition here, I do think we end up keeping 9. Arlington Hambright versus Lacavius Simmons, the 2 7th round picks we had this previous year. I think that those are probably going to be the competition there. Seeing which one sticks with the roster, and ultimately probably throw one of those guys to be a backup for either right tackle or left tackle. So then, now we're going to end up moving on to the defense, seeing who's going to make the team. Something that's a little bit more, I would say, sure. So let's go ahead and start off with the defensive line, or at least the front 3, as I like to call it, because I kind of, in a 5. It's so weird because a 3-4 nowadays is really just, or at least in the way the Bears run it, a 5-2. It's not. It's so rare to see outside linebackers, go into coverage, especially. I mean, it was more common with Vic Fangio, but with Chuck Pagano and a lot of other defensive coordinators, it's more like a 5-2 if we're being completely honest here. But so for our front 3, we have Akeem Hicks, Bilal Nichols, Roy Robertson Harris, and John Jenkins are kind of like who I would consider, and then Brett Urban are guys who I would consider really in the mix for the starting job. We don't really know who is going to be taking over that defensive tackle position. My guess is it's someone who's not on the roster currently. But ultimately, I think that, we probably go ahead and we probably keep 5 players there. And I think obviously Akeem Hicks, Bilal Nichols, Roy Robertson Harris are locks. And then I'm going to say we take John Jenkins and Brett Urban. That leaves Adula Anderson, Trayvon McSwain, and Lee Autry out. Actually, you know what? I'm going to switch my mind. I think we end up letting go of Brett Urban and taking Trevor McSwain because there's a lot of people hyping him up.
Wow, okay. Yeah, I was in agreement there until you changed your mind. I think Urban is something we've seen him play very decently and kind of filling in. So I was going to say it would be Hicks, Nichols, Roy Robertson Harris, John Jenkins, and Brent Urban.
And the reason why I went ahead and threw in Trayvon McSwain is because he was a Duke product defensive tackle, so he's at a position of need for us currently. And, he played pretty damn good in college, so he is an undrafted free agent, but you never really know. Sometimes defensive tackles can come out of nowhere, these 3-4 guys. They kind of tend to fall in the draft because the position isn't super widely desired in the NFL. Not everyone runs a 3-4, and it's a position unique to a 3-4. So yeah, that's the reasoning behind it, why we keep Trayvon McSwain. Let's go ahead and move to outside linebacker. Obvious locks, we have Khalil Mack and Robert Quinn. And then we kind of have a huge cluster of guys with Barkevious Mingo, Isaiah Irving, Travis Gibson, James Vaughters, Ladarius Mack, and Laquel London. This is a hard one. I do believe we probably keep 5 of these guys. I'm saying obviously Khalil Mack, Robert Quinn. Travis Gibson I think is a lock there as well, because we just drafted him in the 4th round. So that's 3 guys, and then we got 2 guys left over. I'm going to go ahead and say Barkevious Mingo and James Vaughters. Unfortunately, I think Ladarius Mack probably does not make the team.
Yeah, I don't think Ladarius Mack makes it either. I was going to say, of course, Mack, Quinn, Gibson, and I think I agree with you on Mingo, and I could see them keeping Isaiah Irving, but I think between him and Vaughters is going to be the battle to watch there.
Yeah, and Irving's been with the team for a long time, so it's a potential that we can go ahead and keep him there. Let's go ahead and move on to inside linebackers. Currently, we have 6. We have Roquan Smith, Danny Trevathan, Josh Woods, Joel Iyebuniwe, and then Keandre Jones and Rashad Smith. This one is, I got to be honest, I don't really know too many guys at the bottom of the roster, so I'm just going to assume that they keep 4 with Roquan Smith, Danny Trevathan, Joel Iyebuniwe, and Josh Woods. Yeah,
I'm totally in agreement with you there. I think this one's pretty clear cut. I think the Bears kind of have the inside linebackers that they want. I think they're pretty much knowing where they're going there with position, so I don't think there's really too much we need to say about that.
Absolutely. So now let's go ahead and look at cornerbacks. Now this is a tough one. This is a little bit of a tough one. I think we end up keeping 7 and going a little cheap at safety and probably only keeping 4 safeties. But when you look at our cornerbacks, we have 10 currently on the roster. Obvious ones that we're keeping is going to be Kyle Fuller, Jalen Johnson, and Buster Skrine. But then we have a big kind of and I also believe that we'll keep Kindle Vildor as well, considering that he was a recent draft pick and someone who I'm a big fan of. And then we kind of have a big, so that's 4 of them. Then we have kind of a big, cluster with Kevin Tolliver, Artie Burns, Duke Shelley, and then kind of guys towards the bottom of the roster. We have Stephen Denmark, Xavier Coward, and then Michael Joseph. I believe Michael Joseph was a Dubuque product not too long ago for the Bears. But ultimately, I do believe we keep 7, and I believe those 7 are Kyle Fuller, Jalen Johnson, Buster Skrine, Kevin Tolliver, Artie Burns, Duke Shelley, and Kindle Vildor. And then I believe that, unfortunately, Stephen Denmark, Xavier Coward, and Michael Joseph all miss the roster.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think the question, I think if they keep 7, that's a 7 that I would definitely keep. I think, if they end up going with 6, then it really becomes between Artie Burns and Kevin Tolliver. I think one of those two is they'll be fighting for the roster spot. But I do think they should keep 7 because I think that, they can afford to go 4 on safeties instead of 5. Just personally what I think.
Yeah, no, I agree. You know what? But what I disagree, I think we do keep Artie Burns and Kevin Tolliver. I think we'd actually probably cut Duke Shelley. Now, he's played decent in parts last year, but at the end of the day, Kindle Vildor could fill in his role as a backup slot cornerbacks, and it would make more sense to me to, put more at outside cornerback than slot cornerback, and having 2 quality backups than just 1 for that outside cornerback position. So that's, if we do go with 6, my belief is that Duke Shelley will probably be the one that loses out, even though I was a big fan of him coming out of college.
Right. No, I understand that.
So then we have safety, and we have 6 safeties on the roster. I'm saying we keep 4 probably, but there is an opportunity to keep 5 right now. We have Eddie Jackson, Treshaun Gibson, Deion Bush, DeAndre Houston Carson, and Sherrick McManus. And I'm going to believe that we end up keeping Eddie Jackson, Treshaun Gibson, Deion Bush, and Sherrick McManus. I think DeAndre Houston Carson ends up losing his position. Oh, we actually also have Marquis Christian now, which I forgot about.
I think that if they go with 4, I think it'll be Eddie Jackson, Treshaun Gibson, Deion Bush, and Marquis Christian, actually. And then I think if they go with 5, then it's likely that they keep Sherrick McManus, just because he is someone that has been on special teams also in the past. So I kind of think no matter what, I think Houston Carson is the one on his way out.
Well, Sherrick McManus, from the reason why I would probably keep him on the team regardless, is he is the longest tenured Bears player, and he's also been special teams ace. He's made the Pro Bowl for special teams, I believe. Yeah. So that is the reason why I would probably keep him over DeAndre Houston Carson, even though DeAndre Houston Carson probably gives us more at safety than Sherrick McManus does. Now we have the specialist positions, which I don't know if we really need to get into. It seems like Eddie Pinheiro, Pat O'Donnell, and Patrick Scales are really going to be the starters, and those are pretty unquestioned.
I think those are locks, like 100%. I think that's what we can definitely be certain about.
Yeah, 100%. So that's going to go ahead and wrap up our 53-man roster predictions. It'll be interesting to see how that ends up playing out. I don't know the exact date when we need to cut down by, but we have some time. We do have some time until the start of the season, so we'll probably have some time until we need to cut down on that regard. And hey, I'm excited to see which of these players stand out. You never know who could potentially lose their job, who could be leaving this team. It's really there tends to be some surprises in training camp, and I guess we're just gonna have to see how that plays out. Hey guys, like our video, subscribe, and check out our bi-weekly podcasts on Apple Podcasts. Thanks.